Hello. So today we're going to be looking at Orchestra versus Prefect versus Dagster. Three orchestration tools for modern data teams. Now, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details of every single feature and how it compares in one tool versus the other, this is not the video for you. We're going to be looking at a much more high level. Who is this for? What problems does each one solve? And what does it alleviate for data teams rather than, digging through every single thing it does and doesn't support. So let's get on with it. First up to bat, we have Orchestra. And as you can see, Orchestra pitches itself as a single pane of glass to monitor all of your kind of AI and data workflows, which being the most modern tool we'll look at today, is probably pretty well positioned to do so. So what about usability? Well, even from just the website, we can see they have this kind of AI-based pipeline builder and a nice kind of UI that goes with it for people to come in and build pipelines. And if we dig a bit deeper, we can even see that these get backed in YAML. So everything is code for those who want to interact with it that way. So feels like it kind of covers both bases on terms of how technical you need to be able to build things in Orchestra, where you can either follow like a developer flow or a more UI based approach and not really lose anything from either, to be honest. So that's pretty good. Now, when it comes to kind of workflow observability, we can see that Orchestra has this whole built-in kind of data asset, data health oversight pages, which you kind of get for free, which is great. As well as that, we can see that if we were to dig around in like a pipeline, we very quickly are able to access all of our standard logs. We don't have to, set up any sort of container routing to get those. And we can even see we have some really nice interactive lineage, which is super useful for both end users and engineers alike. That again comes kind of out of the box with Orchestra, and we really didn't have to do anything to set that up. So doing pretty well on the observability front. Now, when it comes to deployment, Orchestra is a SaaS product, but we can see on their website there is a very clear and well laid out pricing page for us to come in and actually see, which one do we need, which one is going to suit us, and what's best for our organization. And also, being a SaaS product, this means we're not going to have to worry about the initial setup and the infrastructure. So we're going to be able to onboard people super quick. And with the AI assisted docs and the kind of features you get out of the box, it's pretty safe to let people start kind of connecting and playing around regardless of what business function they're in. So overall, I would say Orchestra is pretty suitable for any type of team, really, no matter how technical. And we can also see that they have a whole host of integrations listed on that integration page. So it's relevant for pretty much most teams within your organization. They can come in, connect, start building pipelines, and really be up and running quite quickly, whether they prefer doing it through the user interface or doing it through code. Ultimately, it's all going to get backed in YAML, and that is going to be awesome for AI. So yeah, really feels like an easy way to get up and running for any team and be able to connect a whole bunch of things and start orchestrating them well right from the outset. Next up, we have Prefect. And Prefect has been a fairly talked about orchestrator for several years now. And scrolling straight to the homepage, we can see that it comes in both a premium and open source version, which means you can either deploy yourself or you can pay Prefect to do it for you. But scrolling down, we now see Prefect is mainly focused around Python, so we're probably expecting this to be a little more developer heavy style of orchestrator compared to Orchestra's user interface, but let's have a look around, see a bit more. And if we look at the quick start page, we can see that both with the open source, we're expected to, run some command line, know a bit about Docker and execute some code. Similarly, even with cloud, the quick start is focused around like a developer workflow. So we would expect this to be much more of a developer focused tool than potentially rolling it out to some of your more business facing users. Now, when it comes to the observability piece of Prefect, everything is in Python. So you're basically just going to get whichever Python logs you define, and they're just going to come out from your compute, kind of as you would expect as like a dev. Maybe not the easiest to dig around in if you're not. And similarly, they have the concept of assets. So you define an asset in your Python code and it is then tracked within Prefect itself. But that's all for you to configure and set up as you kind of get going. As for kind of pre-canned integrations that you might want to use, you can see that Prefect also does have some kind of pre-built integrations for mostly data tooling, but it's not an exhaustive list. And I imagine that you're supposed to build most of it in Python, which, it's built for devs. That's what they're going to do. And if we have a quick look around a empty version of Prefect, we can see it's kind of arranged in like a Python workflow style of way, where we're looking at things like runs and pools and deployments and bits like that. On the subject of deployment, as I mentioned earlier, Prefect has both a cloud and open source offering. This means you could choose to pay them for it or spin it all up yourself, but that requires maintenance and a team to look after it. So probably has a little slower startup curve than it possibly could. And finally, we have Dagster, who are another Python-based orchestration tool that is, I would say, solely aimed at data teams based on the kind of things it cares about, which we'll get into in a minute. Now, in terms of deployment options for Dagster, as you can see, there is an option of Dagster Plus, which is their kind of paid hosted service, which you could go for. Or again, like Prefect, it has an open source component, but that requires you to have a team who are comfortable spinning up, deploying, and managing that for you, as well as paying for the infrastructure cost underneath. And given that it's running data processes, at some point it's probably going to need a Kubernetes deployment, which requires a whole nother kettle of fish in terms of people you have to hire and get to run things. If we were to take a quick look at the docs, we can see, once again, we're kind of expected to define everything in Python, which great if you're a data team or a fairly technical any other team, but not ideal if you're just the average business user who wants to get data from A to B. Out of the box, we can kind of see Dagster aims itself at monitoring and observing all of your data assets and caring really in depth about their health. It has this whole kind of catalog approach that you can use to look at the data that you're processing. But jumping back into the docs, this is not for free. When you're writing your Python transformation code, you have to decorate it with these Dagster decorators and define what you want to kind of collect and know and which assets there are and how you're going to process them. And that sounds great, but I bet if I asked you now to list out the assets in your data stack that you want to process so that we can write a pipeline, you'd struggle a little bit. That said, in terms of getting going, there are some pre-canned integrations you can take advantage of. As you can see, these are also fairly focused on data professionals. So if you are a Python qualified data engineer, you're probably going to be able to get going with Dagster pretty quickly. If you're a person in finance who wants to get data out of HubSpot into an Excel sheet, this could take you a minute or two. So overall, it's clear that Dagster has some quite powerful features if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of your data, but it's going to take you a fair amount of setup, and hopefully you're going to get that all right the first time. So in summary, what did we see? Well, we had Orchestra with its YAML and GUI based approach that would be particularly friendly to any business user or developer, all the same. And that is a SaaS product, so very low barrier to entry. Spin it up in minutes, get cracking. Then we had Prefect, which is a lot more Python focused, so a bit more on the dev side of things, and comes with both an open source and premium offering for data teams who want to get going or take full control, with the slight caveat that when Prefect updates something one day, they may have to do a little bit of a migration. Finally, we had Dagster, which was super Python heavy, very interested in data quality and your assets, but it's going to require a fair amount of setup time to understand what you have, take stock, build a full catalog, and again, has a premium and open source offering for teams that either want to set up immediately or just, spend some time figuring it out, deploying it themselves, and really manage every fine bit of what they're doing under the hood. And it also has that asset focus notion, which can take a little getting used to if you're not working in that way already. So when comparing these tools, it's very easy to focus on the features, but as you can see, I'd really recommend looking at what you're trying to enable, who it's going to be for, your appetite in terms of overhead and ongoing kind of maintenance for like DevOps and bits like that, as well as your time to value and kind of oversight that you have from day one is really going to make a difference rather than necessarily individual little features. So there we are, a fairly whistle-stop tour of 3 very popular orchestration tools in the data space right now. And hopefully this has been helpful for you to decide which one is probably going to be the best for your team and your company. Hopefully it's been a bit easier to evaluate than just picking the first one you see off the shelf. So go give these a go and let me know what you think. Cheers.